There are moments in life that pass us quietly, like a breeze stirring the curtains or the soft rhythm of a bookmark in the end of some invisible hour. And yet, in these modest, unannounced minutes, destinies are sometimes written. The soul, unlike the ego, does not make proclamations. It moves in symbol, in dream, in quiet synchronicity. And so too does a meeting of two souls unfold, not through grand declarations, but through divine subtleties. The idea that a soulmate is first encountered as a projection of the inner self is one of the most profound and misunderstood aspects of human connection. It challenges the romanticized notion that our soulmate is a perfect match sent from the heavens, ready to complete us. Instead, what we often experience in the initial stages of connection is not the person as they truly are, but an image, an archetype cast outward by our unconscious onto another. This projection emerges from deep within, from the structures of the psyche that hold the idealized forms of love, union, and emotional fulfillment. It is not a fabrication in the shallow sense, but rather a symbolic representation of what the soul longs for, something it has lost, something it seeks to reintegrate. When one encounters another who stirs something inexplicable, who causes the heart to ache with a strange sense of remembrance, it is often not because this individual has been objectively evaluated and found to be compatible. Rather, it is because they have become the canvas for the inner world's longings. The unconscious sees in them something it wants to reclaim. The qualities we admire or obsess over in that person may, in fact, be qualities buried or dormant within us. If they seem ethereal, it is because they embody something we have forgotten in ourselves. If they seem powerful, it may be because we have disowned our own power. The soulmate thus initially appears as a mirror of the soul's needs. And through this mirroring, we fall in love, not just with them, but unknowingly with ourselves. This dynamic is most intense when a projection is infused with the archetype of the anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine counterpart within each person. For men, the anima is the inner feminine, often projected onto women. For women, the animus is the inner masculine projected onto men. These archetypes are not mere gender roles, but symbolic expressions of the qualities that lie outside our conscious identification. The anima might represent emotional depth, intuition, receptivity, and mystery, while the animus might stand for logic, assertiveness, structure, and inner authority. When these figures are projected, they carry a charge, a numinous energy that makes the encounter feel fated, magical, even divine. This initial projection is necessary. It is a psychological rite of passage. Without it, we would never look twice at the other person. A projection wraps the other in a veil of significance, so that we are drawn and compelled to engage, to explore, to feel. It awakens something dormant, and in doing so, it serves as a vehicle for transformation. The problem arises when we do not realize that it is a projection, and we mistake the image for the person. We begin to believe that they alone possess the beauty, wisdom, or strength that we are magnetized toward. This often leads to disappointment, disillusionment, or heartbreak when the real person inevitably begins to diverge from the idealized image we had cast upon them. The divine quality fades, and we are left wondering what happened. But this moment of disillusionment is not a failure, it is the beginning of deeper intimacy. For if one can look past the shattering of the illusion and begin to see the real individual in their full complexity, the relationship can become something far more meaningful than romantic intoxication. It can become the field in which both individuals are invited to reclaim their own projections and take ownership of what they had disowned. In this way, the soulmate is not merely someone who completes us, they are someone who reveals to us the parts of ourselves we have yet to accept, embody, or love. The passion we feel is not just for them, it is for the return of our own lost wholeness. The unconscious mind does not operate in a linear, rational manner. It operates through symbols, through images, through patterns that feel more like dreams and calculations. When it projects a soulmate image onto another, it is not trying to deceive, it is trying to teach. The projection serves as a vessel for psychic energy that has been cut off from conscious awareness. It creates a narrative of desire and recognition so powerful that we are forced to confront ourselves. The person we fall in love with becomes a living embodiment of what the soul is trying to integrate. They do not merely walk into our lives, they emerge from our depths. This is why people sometimes feel as though they've known someone forever, or that their paths were destined to cross. These feelings may not stem from objective external facts, but from internal psychic truths being mirrored back at them. This also explains why the soulmate encounter can sometimes feel painful, confusing, or even chaotic. The unconscious does not discriminate between positive and negative traits when it projects. It casts both the light and the shadow, so a soulmate might reflect not just our beauty, but our darkness, not just our dreams, but our fears. We may see in them what we love and also what we fear to become. This duality is part of the sacred nature of the encounter. It is not just a romance, it is an initiation. The soul does not seek comfort, it seeks truth, and truth often comes with fire. We often ask whether the person we love is the one, but this question may be less important than asking, what is this person showing me about myself? When we stop searching for external completion and instead turn inward to examine the meaning of the attraction, we begin to see that the soulmate journey is not just about finding someone out there, it is about recovering what is missing in here. The person may or may not remain in our lives forever. They may be with us for a season or for a lifetime, but their deeper purpose is not measured by duration, it is measured by the depth of transformation they evoke. Thus, the soulmate is introduced to us not as a completed gift, wrapped in perfection and ease, but as a mirror wrapped in mystery. The divine does not drop them into our lives with a clear label. Instead, the encounter is woven into the natural fabric of our days, disguised as a coincidence, a chance meeting, a conversation that lingers. And what is being offered is not a fantasy, it is a chance to remember something sacred within ourselves. We are not merely finding the other, we are finding our way back to the image the soul has long carried, the image of its own completion hidden in another face. The soul rarely reveals its greater intentions through dramatic interventions or unmistakable signs. Instead, it moves quietly beneath the surface of ordinary life, cloaked in what we might dismiss as coincidence, misdirection, or even misfortune. What we call fate often looks like nothing at all until we see it in retrospect. This is the nature of divine encounters. They are rarely announced with clarity. They come disguised in the everyday, woven into patterns we don't yet recognize. And so it is with the way God, or the deeper intelligence of the psyche, introduces us to those who are meant to transform us, to awaken in us what we could not find on our own. Most people expect that the meeting with a soulmate would be surrounded by certainty. They believe that such a connection would be obvious from the beginning, as though the soul would light up with immediate recognition. But in truth, the soul's work is subtle. It requires time, tension, and often suffering to unfold. The person who is meant to reshape our interior life rarely arrives with clarity. They might first appear at a time when we are broken, distracted, or consumed by entirely different concerns. The divine hides the most important thresholds inside what seems mundane, and the reason for this is simple. Only those who are attentive to the inner world will notice the invitation. The psyche does not work in straight lines. It does not announce the future. It builds slowly, layer by layer, often leading us through contradictions and false starts. A person may enter our life at a moment that feels entirely unremarkable. Perhaps it is during a time of personal struggle when the last thing we are looking for is connection, or perhaps it is someone we overlook initially, someone who does not match our ideals or our expectations. But over time, a series of small gestures, strange coincidences, or quiet recognitions begin to accumulate. Something within us starts to stir, a familiarity we cannot explain, a feeling that resists logic. We begin to sense that this connection has meaning, though we cannot articulate why. The divine favors this approach because it bypasses the defenses of the ego. If the ego were to see the full magnitude of what is being offered, it would likely interfere either through fear, resistance, or idealization. But when the encounter comes in the form of something ordinary, it allows the deeper self to engage without interruption. There is room for the soul to move, to awaken, to gradually draw forth the recognition it has long hidden. This is not the recognition of the mind. It is the slow dawning of something ancient, as if we are remembering a pattern we always carried but never understood. Sometimes the meeting comes through pain. In fact, the most significant soul encounters often follow a period of personal collapse when we lose something essential, our identity, our plans, our sense of control. The ground becomes fertile for transformation. The death of the old self opens space for the unknown. And into this space, the divine often sends someone who becomes not a rescuer, but a mirror. They do not save us, but they reflect back to us the parts of ourselves that survived the fire. They recognize us in a way we had forgotten how to recognize ourselves. This is the soul's logic that rebirth is made possible only through the stripping away of what is false, and in the ruins of certainty, true connection becomes possible. There are also times when the introduction happens through conflict. The person who is meant to shape our soul may first provoke us, frustrate us, or awaken discomfort. We may find ourselves drawn to them and yet irritated by them. We may resist their presence even as we cannot ignore it. This paradox is not a flaw in the process. It is the soul testing whether we are ready to meet what we have disowned, because the people we are destined to meet in this deeper sense are not here to satisfy our fantasies. They are here to awaken us, and awakening often comes through friction. What appears as a delay, a complication, or an obstacle may in fact be the very mechanism by which the divine times the encounter. Two people may cross paths again and again without realizing its significance because neither is yet ready to see the other clearly. Within us is not determined by desire, it is determined by the soul's timing. The divine does not introduce you to your soulmate when your life is perfectly arranged. It introduces them when you are beginning to remember who you truly are. That is, when you are beginning to shed what you thought you were supposed to be. The soulmate arrives not at the height of illusion, but in the unraveling. Because of this, many people miss the moment. They dismiss the person. They are looking for the sign to be loud, unmistakable, wrapped in perfection. But the soul's language is not noise. It is symbol. It is nuance. It is a quiet insistence that something here matters, even if you cannot yet explain why. Perhaps you keep thinking of them without reason. Perhaps their words echo in your mind in unexpected moments. Perhaps time with them feels both unsettling and familiar. These are the clues, not of fantasy, but of presence. The soul has recognized something your conscious mind cannot yet name. And so it is not unusual that the soulmate is introduced through delay, through detour, through the least expected circumstance. They may arrive through mutual loss, through shared silence, or even through misjudgment. What matters is not the form of the meeting, but the echo it leaves in your inner world. The psyche knows before the ego does. It sends signals, feelings of depth, of significance, of recognition. These feelings are not meant to be resolved immediately. They are meant to be followed, to be trusted, to be lived into. The encounter is not a destination, it is a doorway. Divine timing, then. It's not about efficiency or convenience, it is about preparation. You are introduced to the one who will transform you only when your inner soil is soft enough to receive them. Sometimes that means suffering must come first. Sometimes it means the collapse of a previous illusion. Sometimes it means years of waiting with no clear reason. But always the soul knows. It waits patiently until the moment is right. Not perfect, but honest. Not ideal, but true. And when that moment arrives, it often still does not feel like the miracle you imagine. It feels like a quiet click, like the settling of something long misplaced. It feels like being seen in a way that does not require explanation. It feels like returning to a conversation that has been going on in silence for years. You do not realize at first that this is the moment. Only later, when you look back, do you see how perfectly timed it was, how everything that came before was shaping you to receive it, how every detour was part of the path, and how the soul always knew even when you did not. In the end, the soul's path to meeting its counterpart is never linear, loud, or obvious. What we imagine as coincidence, confusion, or delay is often divine choreography crafted not for our comfort, but for our awakening. The people who transform us most profoundly are rarely introduced with clarity. Instead, they arrive wrapped in mystery, reflection, or even challenge, whether through the silent projection of our inner world or through disguised divine timing. The soulmate is not merely a person we meet, but an encounter with a hidden part of ourselves. Recognizing this truth asks for stillness, inner attention, and a willingness to trust what cannot be explained. Thank you for taking the time to explore this journey of the soul with such depth and openness. May you walk forward with clear eyes and open heart, and the patience to recognize what the divine has hidden in plain sight. Good luck on your path, and may you meet what is meant for you when your soul is ready to receive it.